The stars looked different from Mars. Commander Richard Hayes had noticed this every night during his 3-year posting at Olympus Outpost. Tonight, however, something else caught his eye, a bright flash that shouldn't be there, moving against the black canvas of space. Control, this is Commander Hayes. We have an unidentified object approaching from Vector 227. Can you confirm? Static crackled through his earpiece before a response came. Commander, we're tracking it. Definitely not one of ours. Too fast and the signature doesn't match any Earth vessel. Richard's heart raced. After decades of searching the stars and sending signals into the void, humanity had always wondered if they were alone. Now it seemed they had their answer. All personnel to alert status, he ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through his veins. But hold weapons. Let's not start an interstellar incident on first contact. The object slowed as it approached, revealing itself to be a sleek vessel unlike anything humans had built. Its surface shimmered with an iridescent glow, and it moved, with impossible grace for its size. 6 hours later, Richard stood face to face with the first confirmed alien to visit the solar system. The being called itself Zortal, standing nearly 7 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors like an octopus. Its translator device converted a series of clicks and whistles into English. "We are the Vesperi," the alien said. "We have watched your broadcast for some time. Your species advances quickly." Richard maintained his composure. "We're honored by your visit. I'm Commander Richard Hayes of the Earth Defense Fleet. May I ask what brings you to our system?" The alien's skin rippled blue, an emotional response Richard couldn't interpret. "Necessity. Our civilization faces extinction if we cannot find new allies. We fight a war against an enemy called the Kral Dominion. They destroy all in their path." "A war?" Richard asked. "How long has this conflict lasted?" "By your measurements, over 3 centuries. The Kral are ruthless conquerors. We offer Earth membership in our alliance, protection, technology, knowledge of the galaxy. In exchange, we ask only for military assistance." 2 days later, the United Nations Security Council gathered in an emergency session in New York. The chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from every nation debated humanity's response to the alien invitation. Admiral Samantha Collins, her gray hair pulled into a tight bun and her uniform adorned with medals from the resource wars, approached the podium. At 62, she remained one of Earth's most respected military minds. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "I've reviewed the Vesperi proposal extensively. This is humanity's moment. For centuries, we've looked to the stars and wondered if we're alone. Now we know we're not, and our first cosmic neighbors need our help." Murmurs filled the chamber as she continued. "The technology they offer would advance us by at least a century. Their star maps show thousands of habitable worlds. Most importantly, they offer protection. If the Kral are as dangerous as described, refusing this alliance might mark Earth for future conquest." Dr. Alan Murphy, the leading xenobiologist who had spent the past 48 hours studying everything they knew about the Vesperi, raised his hand to speak. His disheveled appearance reflected sleepless nights analyzing the alien data. "With respect, Admiral, we know almost nothing about either side in this conflict. The Vesperi have shown us carefully selected information. We haven't heard the Kral perspective. In human conflicts, truth is often the first casualty." The debate continued for hours. Some nations eager to gain access to alien technology pushed for immediate acceptance. Others urged caution, wanting more information before committing. Earth to an interstellar war. President Eliza Foster listened to all sides before speaking. "We will form a delegation to visit Vesperi territory. We need to understand what we're potentially involving ourselves in. Admiral Collins will lead the military assessment. Dr. Murphy will head diplomatic relations. No formal commitments until we have more information." Far from Earth, orbiting Jupiter's moon Europa, General Ixil of the Vesperi fleet watched recordings of human warfare throughout history on multiple screens. His skin had turned a pale yellow, the Vesperi equivalent of distress. The Earth delegates wouldn't arrive for another week, giving Ixil time to complete his assessment of humanity's military capabilities. What he saw disturbed him deeply. Remarkable, he whispered to his adjutant. They fought a global war less than a century ago that killed millions of their own kind. Their entire history is punctuated by conflict. They advance their deadliest, technologies faster than anything else. On one screen, soldiers crawled through mud under barbed wire as explosions erupted around them. On another, nuclear mushroom clouds bloomed over cities. A third showed modern soldiers in powered exoskeletons conducting urban warfare exercises. Most spacefaring species outgrow war, Ixil said. These humans have refined it to an art form. His adjutant Kelnus nodded. High Command believes this makes them perfect allies against the Crawl. High Command doesn't understand what they're looking at, Ixil replied, his color darkening. Look at this footage from their World War II. Outmatched soldiers fighting house to house in destroyed cities, continuing even when victory seemed impossible. Or here, their Vietnam War, where technologically inferior forces used the environment and unconventional tactics to exhaust a superpower. He switched to footage of a recent training exercise where human soldiers marched 40 miles carrying heavy equipment, then immediately engaged in combat simulations without rest. The Vesperi would collapse after half that distance, Ixil said, and the Kral would consider it torture to make soldiers endure such conditions. Kelnus looked confused. Isn't their endurance an asset? You don't understand, Ixil said, his skin now pulsing with anxiety. Humans don't fight like we do. They don't retreat when casualties reach acceptable loss thresholds. They keep fighting. They adapt. They use psychological warfare. They target supply lines instead of just military assets. He paused a video showing human soldiers continuing to fight despite severe injuries. Get me a secure channel to High Command. These humans are unlike any species we've encountered. If we bring them into this war, I fear what they might do once they fully understand galactic politics. They must not be allowed to join this conflict. As Kelnus left to establish the connection, Ixil continued studying the screens, his dread growing by the minute. The Vesperi had invited many species to join their alliance over the centuries. None had displayed the frightening combination of ingenuity, tenacity, and capacity for violence that humans possessed. They think they're recruiting an ally, he muttered to himself. They don't realize they're unleashing something that even the Crawl will fear. Lieutenant Kate Winters felt strange walking through the curved hallways of the Vesperi flagship. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, making her movements feel bouncy and awkward. Beside her, Major Greg Powell seemed equally uncomfortable, his hand never straying far from where his sidearm would normally be. The Vesperi had politely requested they come unarmed for this cultural exchange. I still don't understand what they want us to show them, Kate whispered. Greg shrugged. Admiral Collins says they're curious about human combat techniques. Apparently the Vesperi mostly fight with drones and AI systems. Hand-to-hand combat is rare for them. Their escort, a slim Vesperi with blue-green skin, stopped before a large circular door. Our training arena, the alien explained through its translator. Many of our military leaders have assembled to observe. The door slid, open to reveal a space the size of a basketball court. The floor was padded, and around the edges sat about 20 Vesperi in what Kate assumed were military uniforms. Their skin colors ranged from pale yellow to deep purple. Among them sat General Ixil, his skin a tight, controlled gray. He had argued against this demonstration but had been overruled by his superiors. Now he watched with growing concern as the two humans entered the arena. We wish to understand your physical combat methods, explained the ranking Vesperi officer. Our species evolved to avoid physical confrontation. We are curious how humans fight without weapons. Kate and Greg exchanged glances before beginning a basic martial arts demonstration. They started with simple moves, punches, blocks, kicks, before moving to more complex takedowns and grappling techniques. The Vesperi watched in silence, their skin colors shifting rapidly. When Greg flipped Kate over his shoulder and she rolled smoothly back to her feet, several aliens visibly flinched. Even your training involves such violence? One asked. This is just practice, Greg explained. In real combat we wouldn't hold back. The demonstration continued for nearly an hour. By the end, Kate and Greg were sweating but barely winded. The Vesperi observers had grown increasingly still, their colors mostly faded to pale yellows and grays. General Ixel spoke for the first time. "You train all your soldiers this way?" Kate nodded. "Basic hand-to-hand combat is standard for all military personnel. Special forces receive much more intensive training." As they left the arena, Ixel turned to his aide. "They consider this basic training," he said quietly, "and they seem to enjoy it." Back on Earth, President Foster stared at the unexpected visitor in her office. The Kral diplomat called himself Dravkos. Unlike the tall, slender Vesperi, he was broad and stocky, with thick, leathery skin and 4 eyes that blinked independently of each other. "You come unannounced," she said carefully. "The Vesperi didn't mention any Kral presence in our system." "They wouldn't," Dravkos replied, his translator giving his voice a deep, rumbling quality. "The Vesperi prefer to control the narrative. I came when we detected their ships approaching your world." Dr. Murphy, present for the meeting, leaned forward. "The Vesperi say you're conquerors who destroy everything in your path." Dravkos made a sound that his translator didn't convert. "Of course they do. And what proof have they offered of these claims?" "Selected historical records," Murphy admitted. "Footage of attacks on Vesperi colonies." "Ask them who attacked first." "Hundreds of years ago," the Kral suggested. "Ask them what happens to the species they recruit after the war in each sector ends." President Foster's eyes narrowed. "What are you implying?" "The Vesperi don't want allies. They want cannon fodder," Dravkos said flatly. "They recruit developing species, gift them technology they can't fully understand, then send them to die in place of Vesperi soldiers." "That's a serious accusation," Foster replied, "which is why I bring evidence." The Kral placed a small device on her desk. "Records of the last 6 species who joined the Vesperi Alliance. Study their fates carefully before you decide." Under the scorching Australian sun, General Ixel watched through the feed of his hidden probe as human soldiers conducted desert warfare exercises. The temperature was 104 degrees Fahrenheit, conditions that would require environmental suits for Vesperi troops. Yet the humans wore only light combat gear as they navigated the harsh terrain. The exercise scenario was brutal. Limited water, simulated enemy fire, and unexpected changes in mission parameters. Ixil expected them to stop when 2 soldiers collapsed from heat exhaustion. Instead, their teammates carried them and their equipment, refusing to leave anyone behind, and completed the mission. "Impossible," Ixil muttered. "The Vesperi would have aborted the exercise. Even the Kral would have retreated to regroup." The human commander then announced that night operations would begin in 3 hours. No rest, no reprieve. Ixil's skin paled to almost white. "They do this willingly? To themselves?" Later that evening, Dr. Murphy sat alone in his office, reviewing the data Dravkos had provided. If accurate, it told a disturbing story. The Mantari joined the Vesperi Alliance, fought for 20 years, then mysteriously lost their homeworld to natural disasters. The Palox fought for the Vesperi for 15 years before a civil war destroyed their civilization. The pattern repeated with species after species. Murphy compared this with the Vesperi historical records they had been given. The inconsistencies were subtle but significant. Dates didn't quite match. Key events were missing. The narratives clashed in critical ways. His phone rang. It was Kate Winters calling from the Vesperi flagship. "Dr. Murphy, something strange happened today," she said quietly. "After our combat demonstration, I overheard 2 Vesperi officers talking. My translator picked up fragments about perfect frontline troops and acceptable casualty ratios. They were discussing humans like resources, not allies," Murphy sighed. "I'm finding discrepancies in their historical accounts too. I don't think the Vesperi have been entirely honest about this war." "What do we do?" "Keep observing. I'll speak with the president. And, Kate, watch your back up there." Aboard his command ship, General Ixil reviewed the day's observations with growing alarm. The human capacity for violence was even greater than he had feared. Their adaptability, pain tolerance, and resourcefulness exceeded anything in Vesperi military doctrine. "Commander," one of his subordinates called. "High Command has rejected your concerns again. They say human violence makes them ideal allies against the Kral." Ixil's skin darkened to a deep blue of frustration. "They understand nothing. The humans aren't just violent, they're clever. They ask questions, they notice patterns. If they discover the truth about our war..." He stared at the image of Earth rotating peacefully on his view screen. "High Command thinks they're recruiting soldiers," he said softly. "They don't realize they're playing with fire. I must warn them again, more forcefully. The humans must not join this war, for everyone's sake." Medical Officer Linda Chen stared at the readings on her tablet. The 3 Vesperi soldiers in the medical bay of Lunar Colony Alpha should not have been there. The joint training exercise had barely begun when the aliens collapsed. "I don't understand," she told the Vesperi doctor beside her. "The exercise wasn't even that demanding by our standards." The alien doctor, whose name sounded like a series of clicks, replied through his translator. "Your basic training would kill most Vesperi. Our bodies aren't built for such stress." Linda looked again at the exercise data. The humans in Vesperi had run 5 miles, completed an obstacle course, and performed team combat drills. For Marines like Sergeant Patel's squad, it was a light warm-up. "Then why did your commanders insist on this joint exercise?" she asked. The Vesperi doctor's skin flickered to a deep purple before returning to its normal blue. "They wanted to measure human physical capabilities directly. We had reports, but many didn't believe them." Linda noticed something odd about the doctor's reaction. Not concern for his patients, but something closer to scientific curiosity. He was studying the differences between species with professional interest. "And what have you learned?" she asked carefully. "That humans are remarkable. You evolved on a high-gravity world with extreme weather patterns and dangerous predators. It made you incredibly resilient." The doctor paused. "Our commanders will be very interested in these results." On the far side of the moon, in a secure conference room, Admiral Collins met with the Vesperi leadership. They had offered to accelerate technology transfers in exchange for the first human combat units. "We can provide ships capable of reaching any star system within 50 light-years," the Vesperi ambassador said. "Energy weapons, shield technology, faster-than-light communications. All we ask is that you commit troops to our cause." Admiral Collins studied the star chart between them. "The President and Security Council want assurances that human forces will remain under Earth command structure." The Vesperi agreed too quickly. Collins noted this, but said nothing. "We would never interfere with your command decisions," the ambassador assured her. "We merely suggest deployment locations based on our greater experience." After the meeting, Collins walked alone through the lunar base's observation dome. Earth hung large and blue in the black sky. Her communication device buzzed, a secure message from Dr. Murphy. "Admiral, we need to talk. I found something disturbing in the Vesperi records." In his private quarters on the Vesperi command ship, General Ixil prepared his most forceful message yet to High Command. He had spent days reviewing human history, studying their wars, their tactics, their resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. On his screen played footage of a small human force holding off a much larger enemy in something called the Battle of Thermopylae. Another screen showed humans fighting house to house in a city called Stalingrad. A third displayed guerrilla fighters in jungles and mountains, using the environment as a weapon against technologically superior forces. Ixil's aide entered the room. "Sir, High Command has rejected your previous communications as alarmist. They say the human integration plan will proceed." Ixil's skin darkened to a deep red, anger, frustration. "They're making a terrible mistake. The humans aren't like the other species we've recruited. They question everything, they adapt constantly, and their capacity for violence when threatened." He gestured to a fourth screen showing a historical reenactment of human ancient warfare. Brutal, primitive, yet displaying tactical thinking that remained relevant even in the age of spaceships and energy weapons. I must try again, Ixil said. Prepare a direct transmission to the High Council itself. Bypass the normal channels. As Ixil composed his message, his ship's sensors detected unusual communications between Earth and the lunar base. They had been instructed not to monitor secure human channels, but Ixil had secretly ordered limited surveillance. Something about Dr. Murphy's activities concerned him. In his cramped office at the United Nations, Dr. Murphy explained his findings to Admiral Collins through secure video link. The Kral data checks out, he said. I've cross-referenced it with other sources. The Vesperi have been systematically recruiting species, using them as frontline troops, then discarding them when they're no longer useful or start asking too many questions. Collins frowned. Are you certain? These are serious accusations. Look at these population graphs, Murphy said, sending files to her tablet. 6 different species, all showing the same pattern: initial growth after contact with the Vesperi, then sharp decline once they've served their purpose in the war. The Kral could be manipulating this data, Collins suggested. I considered that, but I found the same pattern hidden in the Vesperi's own historical archives. They've been careful to obscure it, but the numbers don't lie. Murphy ran a hand through his thinning hair. The war itself might not be what we've been told either. From what I can piece together, the Kral were a peaceful trading species until the Vesperi attacked their core worlds 3 centuries ago. Admiral Collins was silent for a long moment. Why would the Vesperi lie about being the defenders? Because their civilization is dying, Murphy explained. Low birth rates, long maturation periods. They don't have the numbers to fight their own wars anymore. So they find emerging species, offer them advanced technology, use them as soldiers, then ensure they don't become competitors later. In orbit above Jupiter, General Ixil began his transmission to the Vesperi High Council. Esteemed counselors, I come before you with grave concerns about the human integration plan. After extensive observation, I must warn you in the strongest possible terms. Do not let humans join this war. His skin pulsed with emotional colors as he continued, showing footage of human combat exercises, historical battles, and psychological evaluations. They are unlike any species we have encountered. Their homeworld's harsh conditions have bred a species that thrives in situations we find intolerable. They continue fighting long past the point where our troops would retreat. Their tactics display a creativity and adaptability that will make them unpredictable allies and potentially devastating enemies if they ever discover our true intentions. Ixil's transmission continued for nearly an hour, building his case with methodical precision. Unknown to him, his signal was being intercepted by Earth monitoring stations. Admiral Collins watched with growing concern as the Vesperi general laid out exactly what the Vesperi planned for humanity. I implore you, Ixil concluded, reconsider this plan before it's too late. These humans are not just another species to be used and discarded. If they learn the truth about our past allies, if they realize our intentions, I fear what they might do. The High Council's response was brief and dismissive. Your concerns are noted but overruled. The integration will continue as planned. Return to your duties. As the transmission ended, Ixil slumped in his chair. They hadn't listened. Again. On Earth, President Foster received the intercepted transmission, along with Dr. Murphy's analysis. Her face grew grave as she understood the full implications. So the Vesperi plan to use us as cannon fodder, she said quietly. And this General Ixil seems to be the only one who understands how dangerous that plan might be. For them, yes, Admiral Collins said. He sees what we're capable of if provoked. President Foster stood and walked to the window overlooking Washington, D.C. Prepare a response to the Vesperi ambassador. Tell them we're accelerating our participation in their alliance. And find a way to contact this General Ixil privately. He might become a valuable asset. She turned back to her advisors, her expression hardened with resolve. If the Vesperi want to see what humans can do in war, we'll show them, just not in the way they expect. Captain Daniel Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship Defiance, watching stars streak by outside the viewscreen. 6 months had passed since Earth discovered the truth about the Vesperi Crawl War. 6 months of furious preparation, reverse engineering alien technology, and making plans that the Vesperi knew nothing about. "Status report," he ordered. His executive officer, Commander Olivia Ward, looked up from her console. "All systems normal, Captain. We'll reach the Alpha Centauri battlefront in 20 minutes. Daniel nodded. The Defiance was the first human-built starship using Vesperi technology. Officially, they were joining the fight as eager allies. The Vesperi believed humans were following their battle plan, ready to sacrifice themselves as the newest expendable species in a centuries-old war. They were wrong. The ship's communications officer called out, "Captain, incoming transmission from the Vesperi flagship." "On screen," Daniel replied. The image of Admiral Turl, the Vesperi fleet commander, appeared. His skin was a confident shade of green. "Captain Mitchell, welcome to your first battle. Remember, your ship will join Attack Group 3. Your target is the Krull supply vessels. Draw their fire while our main fleet attacks their heavy cruisers." In other words, Daniel thought, sacrifice yourselves so the Vesperi ships stay safe. "Understood, Admiral," he said aloud. "We're honored to fight alongside the Vesperi." As the transmission ended, Daniel turned to his bridge crew. "Review the real mission parameters. We stick to President Foster's orders." The crew nodded. They all knew why they were really here. On Earth, President Foster met secretly with an unlikely guest, General Ixil of the Vesperi fleet. After his warnings had been intercepted, Earth had made careful contact. It had taken months to convince him to defect, but eventually, he saw it was the only way to prevent disaster. "Your ship has reached the battle zone," Ixil said, his skin a worried gray. "The High Council expects them to follow orders and die bravely." "Captain Mitchell has other instructions," Foster replied. "Your information about Vesperi tactics has been invaluable, General. Thank you for your courage." Ixil's skin rippled with color. "I fear for my people. They don't understand what they've done by involving humans in this war." Foster smiled thinly. "They'll learn today. In the Alpha Centauri system, the battle began exactly as the Vesperi had planned. Krull warships moved to intercept the approaching fleet. The Defiance, along with 3 Vesperi light cruisers, broke formation to attack the Krull supply ships. But as soon as they were out of visual range of the main fleet, Captain Mitchell gave new orders. "All ships, execute Operation Thunderbolt." The Defiance suddenly accelerated to maximum speed, leaving their Vesperi escort ships behind. Instead of attacking the lightly defended supply vessels, they drove straight toward the heart of the Krull formation. "Sir," Commander Ward reported, "the Vesperi escorts are demanding we return to formation." "Ignore them," Daniel ordered. "Weapons. Status? Ready, Captain. Target the lead Krull battleship. Fire only on my command." The Defiance raced toward the massive Krull vessel. Alarms blared as enemy weapons locked onto them. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, "we're being targeted by multiple Krull ships." Daniel remained calm. "Hold course. Open a channel to the Krull flagship." The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances but followed orders. Moments later, the scowling face of Supreme Commander Vrex appeared on screen. The Krull leader had 4 eyes set in leathery skin, all blinking in surprise at seeing a human. "This is Captain Daniel Mitchell of Earth," Daniel said clearly. "We request immediate parley under the Galactic Neutral Species Protocol." Vrex looked confused. "Humans are Vesperi allies. There is no parley in war." "We are not allies," Daniel replied. "We were recruited under false pretenses. We have information about Vesperi activities that will interest you." There was a long pause. The Defiance continued hurtling toward the Krull formation, now close enough that a single volley could destroy them. "You have 1 minute," Vrex finally said. Daniel nodded to his communications officer, who sent a data package, everything Earth had learned about the Vesperi's systematic exploitation of other species, including evidence from General Ixil. Vrex's eyes widened as he reviewed the information. "This explains much about their recruitment patterns, but why come to us?" You could simply withdraw from the conflict. Because the Vesperi won't stop with Earth, Daniel explained. We propose a different approach. The Krylon humans together could force peace negotiations. Supreme Commander Vrex was silent for a long moment. Then a rumbling sound emerged. Kral laughter. Brave human. You fly one ship into the middle of a battle fleet to propose an alliance? Yes, Daniel said simply. Before Vrex could respond, alarms blared again. Sir, the tactical officer shouted, the Vesperi main fleet has changed course. They're moving to intercept us. On the view screen, Vrex barked orders to his subordinates. Then he turned back to Daniel. Your ship is about to be caught between our forces and the Vesperi. What do you propose? Daniel smiled. That we give the Vesperi something they don't expect. Admiral Turl watched in growing rage as the human ship ignored orders and flew straight toward the Kral fleet. His skin had turned dark orange with anger. Recall attack groups 1 and 2, he ordered. Intercept that human vessel before it reaches the Kral command ship. His second-in-command looked concerned. But sir, that will expose our flank. Do it. The humans cannot be allowed to communicate with the Kral. They know too much. As the Vesperi ships changed formation, alerts sounded across the bridge. Sir, a sensor operator called out, the Kral fleet is standing down weapons. Turl stared in disbelief at the tactical display. The Kral warships were powering down their weapon systems. At the same time, the Defiance had come to a stop directly between the two fleets. What are they doing? Turl demanded. Hail the human captain immediately. When Captain Mitchell's face appeared on screen, his expression was calm and determined. Admiral Turl, he said, by now you've noticed the Kral have ceased fire. What have you done? Turl hissed. We've shared the truth, Daniel replied, about how the Vesperi have used and discarded species after species, about how this war began with your unprovoked attack on Kral worlds centuries ago. Turl's skin paled. These are lies. We have evidence provided by one of your own, Daniel continued. General Ixil saw the truth. He tried to warn your High Council about humanity. They should have listened. On the bridge of the Defiance, Daniel gave a subtle signal. Moments later, 50 small objects launched from the ship, racing toward both fleets. What are those? Turl demanded. Data packages, Daniel explained, being transmitted to every ship in both fleets. Every soldier, every crew member will know the truth about this war. Turl's skin went almost white with shock. In Vesperi society, information was carefully controlled by the leadership caste. The idea of directly informing common soldiers was unthinkable. You can't do this, Turl whispered. We already have, Daniel replied. Humanity will not be your next disposable army. Instead, we offer both sides something you've forgotten how to imagine: peace negotiations. As the data packages reached their targets, communication chatter erupted across both fleets. For the first time in centuries, Vesperi and Kral soldiers were learning the unfiltered truth about the war they had been fighting. Daniel turned to his crew. Now we wait. Either they'll destroy us, or this 300-year war begins to end, today. Commander Ward looked at the view screens showing both alien fleets in standoff positions. Which do you think it will be, sir? Daniel watched as confusion spread through the enemy ranks. Humans don't just excel at fighting wars, Commander. Sometimes we're even better at ending them. 3 weeks after the standoff at Alpha Centauri, representatives from Earth, the Vesperi Alliance, and the Kral Dominion gathered in the United Nations General Assembly Hall. It was the first peace conference in over 3 centuries of interstellar. President Foster watched from her seat as delegates from dozens of worlds filled the chamber. Some species she recognized from the files General Ixil had provided, survivors of races nearly destroyed by their alliance with the Vesperi. Others were new to her, minor powers who had stayed neutral in the long conflict. Admiral Collins leaned close to her. The Vesperi High Council representatives look uncomfortable. Foster nodded. The 5 members of the Vesperi leadership caste sat rigidly in their seats, their skin colors shifting between pale yellow and gray, signs of stress and fear according to Ixil. They should be uncomfortable, Foster replied quietly. The data packets Captain Mitchell distributed have circulated throughout both empires. Their own people are demanding answers. On the other side of the hall, Supreme Commander Vrex of the Kral led his delegation with surprising dignity. The massive four-eyed alien had agreed to the peace talks within hours of receiving Earth's evidence. Unlike the Vesperi leadership, the Kral government system required more accountability to their population. This meeting will come to order, announced the UN Secretary-General. For the first time in generations, there is hope for peace between the Vesperi Alliance and the Kral Dominion. We thank both delegations for agreeing to these historic talks. Captain Mitchell sat with the Earth military delegation. His actions at Alpha Centauri had made him a hero on Earth, and a controversial figure among both alien powers. The Vesperi High Council had demanded his arrest for treason. The Kral had offered him honorary citizenship. He had accepted neither. As the opening speeches began, Mitchell reflected on how quickly events had unfolded. What the Vesperi had planned, as a simple recruitment of cannon fodder, had instead become the catalyst for ending their centuries of manipulation. General Ixel entered the chamber last, escorted by UN security officers. His defection had been the turning point, providing Earth with the evidence needed to expose the Vesperi's true intentions. Now he walked a difficult path, rejected by his own people, but not yet trusted by others. The lead Vesperi counselor spoke, first his translator converting his clicks and whistles into English. The Vesperi Alliance has always sought peace and stability in the galaxy. These human accusations are exaggerations and misunderstandings of our cultural practices. A murmur ran through the assembly. In the public gallery, representatives from species who had suffered under Vesperi protection stirred angrily. President Foster stood to respond. With respect, Counselor, the evidence speaks for itself. 6 different species systematically recruited, used as frontline troops, then abandoned or actively undermined once they were no longer useful. We have General Ixel's testimony, your own historical records, and data from multiple independent sources. She gestured to a large display screen showing population graphs of former Vesperi allies. Each showed the same pattern: growth upon joining the alliance, then catastrophic decline. Earth will not become the next victim in this cycle, Foster continued, nor will we allow other emerging species to be exploited. This war ends now, and a new galactic order begins, one based on genuine cooperation, not manipulation. The Vesperi. Counselor's skin darkened to deep blue. You understand nothing of galactic politics. Our methods preserve stability for centuries. Supreme Commander Vrex rumbled something that made his translator pause before providing the English version. Stability built on the bones of innocent species is no stability at all. The Kral were peaceful traders before the Vesperi attacked, our homeworlds claiming we were a threat to galactic security. Dr. Murphy, who had been studying both alien cultures intensively, stepped forward with his analysis. The fundamental problem is clear. The Vesperi have low birth rates and extremely long maturation periods. They cannot sustain military operations without assistance. Rather than admit this weakness and seek genuine allies, they developed a system of exploitation. General Ixel finally spoke, his voice soft but clear. I warned my people about humans. I told them you were different, too adaptable, too questioning, too determined to be treated as disposable troops. They should have listened. He turned to face the Vesperi delegation. I betrayed my people because I saw a pattern that would lead to our destruction. If we had successfully recruited humans, used them, and then tried to discard them, they would have turned on us with a vengeance no previous species could manage. The hall was silent as Ixil continued. Humans don't just fight wars better than any species I've studied. They also have a stronger sense of justice. They could have used their knowledge to destroy the Vesperi completely. Instead, they chose to force us to the negotiating table. The talks continued for days. Old wounds were exposed, accusations were made and countered, historical records were examined and cross-referenced. Slowly, painfully, the outline of a peace agreement began to emerge. Captain Mitchell found General Ixil alone on the UN building's observation deck late one night, staring at the stars barely visible above New York's lights. You risked everything, Mitchell said. Why? Ixil's skin shifted to a calm blue. I saw what was coming. If humans had joined the war, fought for us, then discovered our deception, your response would have ended my civilization completely. You think we'd have destroyed your worlds? Without question, Ixil replied. I studied your history. Pearl Harbor, September 11th. Whenever your people are betrayed, your response is overwhelming. And you never, ever forget. Mitchell considered this. Maybe, but we're not just warriors. We can build things too. That's why I defected, Ixil said. I saw both possibilities in humans. Unmatched capacity for destruction, but also for creation. I hoped you would choose the latter. On the final day of negotiations, President Foster addressed the assembled delegations. The peace framework was complex but fair. Reparations for damaged worlds, guarantees of sovereignty, monitored disarmament, of planet-killing weapons and protection for developing species. Today marks a new chapter in galactic history, she said. The war that consumed generations ends not with destruction, but with understanding. Earth will help enforce these accords. We pledge to use our strength not for conquest, but for justice. The delegates prepared to sign the agreement. Supreme Commander Vrex approached General Ixil. You were right about the humans, the Krah leader said. They are unlike any species we've encountered. Ixil watched as Captain Mitchell chatted with diplomats from a dozen worlds. Yes. When I pleaded with my people not to let humans join this war, I feared what they would do to us. I never imagined they would end the war instead. A fortunate miscalculation, Vrex observed. Indeed, Ixil agreed, his skin shifting to peaceful green. The Vesperi feared humans as warriors. We should have recognized their greater strength, their capacity to imagine better futures and make them real. As the Earth delegation prepared for the signing ceremony, Admiral Collins found Captain Mitchell staring at the completed treaty document. Having second thoughts, she asked. Mitchell shook his head. Just thinking about what General Ixil said when this all began. He begged his leaders not to let humans join the war. Collins smiled. He was right in a way. We didn't join their war. We ended it.